Hello, Intellivision Touch controller. In this video, a manual with some tips for you to be able to get the most out of your controller. So let's go. To use the controller on the console, the cable with DB9 connector connects directly to the port on the Intellivision 2 console, or the Sears Super Video Arcade. In the case of Intellivision 1, it is necessary to install an adapter cable to be able to include this port in the console, already in the Intellivision 2 standard. In the case of the flashback console, it has the connector, but it needs an adapter to be able to convert the electrical signals. To use the controller on the console, it is necessary to be powered by the USB Type-C cable with any cell phone charger, with an output of 5 volts and at least 0.5 amps of current. To use the emulators, connect the USB Type-C data cable, which will already provide power and data transfer for the controller to emulate the USB keyboard on your emulator. The touch keyboard, with overlay on the screen, the 4 function buttons with the 3 actions. Button 1 is the top left and right, button 2 is the bottom left, and button 3 is the bottom right. The analog stick to move the 16 positions, and the double click on the button of this analog stick, pressing down 2 times in a row, serves to access the game pause and the options menu. In this double-click action, the controller sends the pause signal for the game, corresponding to the 1+9 buttons on the original controller, and enters the configuration menu. Here in the menu, the directional navigates through the options, and any of the buttons enters the function. First option, exit, simply returns to the previously loaded overlay and to the game. Overlay selection. Here it presents the amount of files available. Navigation through items is with the directional down, up, and sideways to scroll through the pages. Once the overlay is chosen, any action button will load the selected one and return to the game. Again, here in the menu, console connection. This is the default output, indicated here with the circle that this output is active. Then the controller is sending the signals to the console. USB connection keyboard, player 1 or player 2. Selecting these options and having the controller connected to the emulator with the data cable, the controller will start to emulate a USB keyboard, with the mapping here defined for player 1, which is the left controller, or player 2, which is the right controller. In order for 2 people to play at the same time, with 2 controllers, one of the players will select the player 1 option, and the other player will select the player 2 option. Once this option is selected, the controller is now sending the commands through the USB keyboard emulator. When the controller is turned on, for 3 seconds it tries to communicate data over the USB cable. If it can't, the USB connection options are disabled. The option to adjust the brightness of the display. He is currently at level 4. Pressing the button, we enter the configuration. Directional up or down changes the value from 1 to 10. Pressing the button, it returns. And this setting is saved for the next time the controller is turned back on. Adjustment of the analog center. Currently here it is at 14%. When the control is turned on, it checks for variations that may occur in the center of the analog and compensates for this by putting plus 10% for those who do not have involuntary activation. You see here that it is very sensitive. Just a small touch here on the directional pad, it already triggers. Depending on the game, you might want it to be less sensitive here in the center. So for that, go in here in the analog center function. Here, tilting the analog stick to the position you want and pressing any of the buttons for it to record that setting. Once that's done, now the analog center is set here to 57%, and it's going to respond farther away from the center. Language selection. Any button to enter the function. Once the language is selected, the language is changed here in the menu. This setting is also saved for the next time the controller has been turned back on. Function test option. It's just a test to check if all the commands are working. Even on the directional pad it shows which positions are being sent. Also the keyboard. To exit this function, just press the directional button. And the last option, About and Instructions. It shows here the version that is installed. In this case here it is 1.06. The model that is the Touch. And here the configuration of the keyboard mapping for the emulator. Any button here to scroll the pages. And in the last one it goes back to the game. And here connected the controller with the USB cable on the computer, we have access to the flash memory files. In this JZAN-TV folder is the keyboard mapping configuration file for the JZAN-TV emulator. You can copy it to the installation location of your emulator. In this Nostalgia folder is the keyboard mapping configuration file for the Nostalgia emulator. You can copy it and replace the existing one in the installation location of your emulator. In this Overlays folder, we have the overlay images that can be loaded into the controller. This is where you can rename these files. For example, starting them with numbers to have your favorites sorted first. You can delete, change, and add other overlays here. Mandatorily in BMP format, and the image file cropped to the measurement of 240 by 320 pixels, and with 8 bits of color intensity, or 256 colors. Other folders and files are part of the firmware, so they should not be changed. Plus, just have a lot of fun with your controller. That's it, thanks.